So we're going to take a little ride in our DeLorean. Back in 2015, I was invited to attend a legislative lobbying event in Washington, D.C. The invitation alone stirred a potent mix of excitement and imposter syndrome. But there was a twist. The night before was to be a welcome dinner, and that invitation said, "Come dressed as your favorite character or person." And without overthinking it, I chose Wonder Woman, not ironically and not as a joke. I chose her because of what she embodies to me: courage, justice, and truth. But the problem was that there was no time to change after getting off the plane. So there I was, walking through the airport, wearing my bright red, blue, and gold Wonder Woman outfit. It felt like all of the eyes were on me. The spotlight was on my bright red boots. I could hear the muffled giggles. And then I got to the dinner, and it didn't gently dawn on me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Everyone else was dressed business professional. I stood there thinking, I don't belong here. And before understanding imposter syndrome as a symptoms problem, I took that moment to think that I didn't belong there. But now what I understand is this. It wasn't that I didn't belong, it was that it wasn't about the costume, it was about the visibility. Because we live in a society that hasn't taught us for those systems. It hasn't prepared us for development. It hasn't taught us skills to move forward or to grow. So in 2023, I completed my dissertation on the impact that imposter syndrome has on women seeking leadership positions in the nonprofit sector. These weren't unqualified women. Many of the women led critical programs. They were the glue that held their organizations together. And they were people that everyone turned to when something broke or needed fixing. But they felt deeply isolated. They didn't have mentors they could lean on. They didn't have basic leadership development. And they felt like nobody was in their corner. So, when you have that knot in your stomach, that feeling to disappear, what if we turn that from imposter syndrome into growing? What if we think of it like an opportunity to grow into a new role, a new relationship, or a new version of ourselves? Because I don't remember if I said it earlier, but imposter syndrome doesn't just show up at work. It shows up everywhere. It shows up in meetings when you're questioning whether or not to speak. It shows up when you've been offered a promotion and think, they must not really know me. And it shows up at home when you're questioning if you're a good enough parent, partner, friend, daughter, or human. Now those women, as I mentioned, they weren't unqualified. They were reaching into their capabilities. And I've seen many of them grow into bigger roles today. And I think, well, I know from personal experience and that research, that there are tools that we can use to help us overcome our imposter syndrome. And so here are 3. First, let me say that I've named the imposter in my head. I call her Karen. Now, this isn't a personal Karen, so no offense if there's any Karens in the audience. She's more of a cultural Karen. She's not evil. She's just loud and super annoying. She sits on my shoulder and says that I'm not qualified. She tells me that I'm not enough. And again, she doesn't just show up at work, she also shows up at home. She shows up when I'm choosing myself unapologetically. But what I've realized that I have to do is to gently but firmly push her aside and say, "Thanks, Karen, but I've got it from here." Because she doesn't get to run my career or any of the meetings that I sit in or my life. And she doesn't get actually to run yours either. So here are your 3 tools. First, instead of asking, "Am I enough?" instead start asking, "What does this moment need from me?" At work, that might mean speaking even when your voice shakes. Don't know if you can hear it now. Got a little bit of imposter syndrome going on. At home, it might mean asking for what you need unapologetically, because self-respect and leadership are about presence and not perfection. Second, think about all the times that somebody has had your back, that they've seen your capability. When when Karen's narrating your inadequacy, I want you to push her away and say, "You know what? John said I'm capable. Heather said she's on my side." And use that as momentum to move forward. Third, save your evidence. Today's kids, I think they like to call it keeping your receipts, yeah? So keep your receipts. Save the email, think about the time of leading important projects, of solving big problems, and come back to it again when your confidence is lagging behind your growth. Has anyone ever heard of a power pose? So a power pose, generally, stand like this. It rewires your system. It centers your breathing. We all could do that. I'm doing it now. And you can even do power poses like this. Now, when I've struggled with imposter syndrome, and I'm able to look back at the times and the people that support me, and I'm able to push Karen aside, I can confidently walk, maybe a little trepidatiously, onto a red circle and stand in front of a crowd. I think that building our confidence isn't about arrogance, right? It's all memory. We all can think of times when somebody has supported us in one way or another. So if I can do that, I can look back at that moment in DC when everybody had opinions of my dress and give myself compassion instead of shame. Has anyone heard of Brené Brown? Raise your hand. Yeah. So she's a shame researcher, and a lot of what she talks about first is vulnerability. And part of vulnerability is being okay with letting people know who you are. So the other tidbit or tool is naming the fact that you even have imposter syndrome, because that's really hard to do. It'd be much easier to just come out here and fake a smile, fake like I think that I belong. But if I'm showing you my vulnerability, that also, if you have imposter syndrome, gives you the capability to also express it. So anytime you feel that discomfort, I don't want you to run from it. I actually want you to lean into it. Because maybe if we think about imposter syndrome as growing, we can then think about it as we're leaning into new versions of ourselves. Turns out the only thing wrong with wearing that Wonder Woman costume is that I forgot I was allowed to.